Thank you for coming. This is a discussion of the history behind the Undercover Heiress of Brockton by Kelly Gosworth. And I wanted to talk today about some of the history behind the story. I want to see if I switch this to slideshow mode. No, I was hoping you wouldn't see my
Now,
slides.
when you go to the first one, it should go right on.
I just wanted to get rid of the side slides, I thought, but I don't.
Oh, yeah, right.
I thought that would do it, but I don't know how to do it.
Right here, go right down to here.
Oh, here, so, not on there.
Yeah.
Ah, you're so, I should have the teacher would know. Yes, that's excellent. Okay, all right. So thank you for coming today. So just a little bit about myself. I am continue to share. Let's see.
Right.
That's not on my screen.
Oh, that's weird.
So
Right here, no,
I don't think I can do it from there.
right here, no, go up.
I'll go back. Hang
Right
on a
there.
sec. Yeah, but see, I think it needs to be on here, not
Oh.
because this is where my,
Go right to the icon on that. Go to the icon, the blue and black screen. The little
I
screen.
think up. I don't think it's gonna do it from there.
Right there.
Yeah, I think it needs to be something in here because this is what's really, this is just projected
Oh, can
there.
we move it, to the side, all right?
Yeah, it's not showing up on her computer screen, that's the issue. Oh, maybe if we grab the screen thing.
Yeah, see, she can't grab
Oh,
that.
yeah.
That is very,
But he's.
yeah, I don't know why it's showing up here and not showing up on. Maybe if we minimize this somehow. Maybe it's behind it.
They were at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm just going to minimize everything and then see if I can. I know why it's not showing up.
That's the same symbol I found.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, it's up there.
Leonard,
Okay, so maybe I just
But,
need
Irish name was Leonard.
to,
Yeah, it's good.
And
So they-
another hand,
So if it wants to
Well,
click on it.
the nation,
Okay,
right,
it could be.
yes.
Okay, it's funny because like whoever came in, my grandfather came in as one.
As a Leonard.
As a name, but in Ellis Island, he was sponsored by somebody in the country with the last name Leonard, and we changed it on his paper.
Just wanna
And he was just so happy.
technology
to have me,
swap.
and he was like, okay. But he just want to start with.
So in the Facebook, do they see me?
And there
They
are
just
some
see
others.
they'd see you and your slides, it's basically just this, but it's put on a Facebook.
So they all were one. They just sat down and they.
I'm just not sure why that is.
Yeah, that's because.
Going up there.
Or certificate.
I
That is, that's certificate says, but there's no legal.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Paper trail.
Because so many German Americans were
Yeah.
discriminated against.
Sharon Stir.
It's a both grandparents. Different.
Okay,
Well, that happened with their, I think that's why they. Yes, and they switched it.
Okay.
But now it's not. on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see.
German.
Yeah.
Full screen.
I mean, all that's fascinating.
Yeah, I find that that's.
Entire screen.
Oh, almost.
Okay, and
I mean,
then,
if we have to stay the slides, it's okay. I just think it's
Oh,
nice.
you got it further
and
on.
then let's go to view. Is it view that I go to?
She
Because
didn't learn about it, that's what I told her.
which thing do I go to view the slideshow? Is it?
Oh, he put here on
But he's a second.
that's.
Yeah.
This one?
But there's so many. You know, it's so.
Okay.
Then we got it.
Okay,
I knew it.
I think I solved it.
Yeah.
Great job,
I
thank
knew
you.
you do it, Laura.
Of course,
Yeah.
now that I say so.
So God always provides good tech help.
Yes.
So just a little bit about myself. I write historical romance and I've been writing since 2011. And The Undercover Heiress of Brockton is my fourth novel. And I write typically in the 19th century, although this one is early 20th century. And my stories are also what's considered to be Christian fiction, meaning the characters in the stories are going to use their faith to overcome the challenges that they face. Okay, so the Undercover Heiress of Brockton is part of the Enduring Hope series from Barber Publishing. This is book 2. Each book in the series is a standalone that looks at a historical or man-made disaster. For those of you that might be watching on Facebook, I want to always be looking at the camera because I do have some people live also enjoying the presentation. But getting back to the book is historical romance, and the characters in the story are going to be affected by the Grover Shoe Factory that occurred in 1905. So what's on the screen is the back cover copy. I'm not going to read that all to you. Okay, so how did a girl from Virginia come up with writing the story of the Grover Shoe Factory fire? So when my publisher was looking for stories based on man-made or natural disasters, I just did a Google search and the Grover Shoe Factory fire came up. And these images were side by side. And when I saw the devastation in that photo, you can see the smokestack back here where I'm pointing is the only thing left of the factory right here. And my immediate thought was no one could have survived that. It looks like a bomb was dropped on that city block. And so as I continued to do a little research and dig in, I learned about some of the people that did not survive, like a woman who's Dora Clark, it was her first day of work. She was in the building at the time. A man named Ray Cole, who was delivering water, didn't even work at the factory, and he perished. So out of the 360, I believe, people that were in the building at the time, 58 people passed away. Many were injured, but 58 lost their lives. And when I looked at that, I was like, how can that be? So I just kind of dug in. I learned about some of the people that were heroes that day. We'll talk about them a little bit later. The people that perished, like I just mentioned, and I kind of knew their stories needed to be told. So a little bit about Brockton in 1905. It was known as Shoe City. There were over 90 shoe factories in the area at the time, and about 6,000 people employed in the industry. So chances are, if you were wearing a nice pair of store manufactured shoes, they were probably made in the Brockton area. And that's an image at the top right of downtown Brockton about that time. And the image on the left is a 1905 Pierce arrow that my heroine loves, and my hero gets a chance to drive, and he finds that a lot of fun. So just a few images from the era to kind of set in your mind the time that we're thinking about. So the Grover Shoe Factory, known as the R.B. Grover, Robbins Grover owned the factory, a massive factory that took about 2/3 of the city block, wooden structure. A couple years before the disaster, they added the 4th floor onto the factory. They built a new boiler and they added in more glass windows. It was a very light filled factory. This was considered a very modern factory. It was a great place for workers to work. The factory also, it produced what was called the Emerson shoes, like I showed you on that other screen, very popular shoe. And there were many stores at that time. It's so interesting. Today you would go to Kohl's or Walmart or Amazon, and they're going to sell multiple brands of shoes. But at that time, Robbins Grover had about 35, I think it was, shoe stores that sold his shoes up and down the East Coast. So very popular shoes. All right. This is a diagram of the factory. And you can see here, it's on the corner of Main and Palmer Streets. And it looks kind of like an E. And the boiler house is back here, just kind of give you the lay of the land. So the factory itself, all the way back to Denton Street. So what we're going to see in a little bit is how much this devastation is. This block here, which I believe at the time was called the Dalbert block, almost all these buildings are burned or rendered completely useless. This building here, I think, is that the Drake Tavern I'm pointing at?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so I chose that to be sort of the hangout for my fireman hero and his family, bachelor family. So wanted them to have a connection to the area. And then if you look over here, you have the firehouse. So we have on the right side, if you're facing the factory, the Campello Fire Station. So that was another reason, because people have asked me, how can you write a romance around a disaster like this? So one of the methods I chose to employ was not to have either of my main characters in the disaster. So one is the fireman, who will be very involved, and we get to see kind of close up what he's experiencing, but he's not an actual fire victim. And then my heroine, who's an undercover reporter. So, and by undercover, I should go back and explain that, she wants to write deep investigative stories, and the only thing that the papers will let her write are, stories about, society, or like a domestic column that she wants to write, investigative stories. So she masquerades as a man, and that comes out later in the book, and that's why she's considered the undercover heiress of Brockton. All right, so we see here where the boiler, when it explodes, the day of the explosion, I mentioned that they had a new boiler. Well, the day of the disaster, which was March 20th, 1905, the new boiler was offline, having routine maintenance, and so they fired up the old boiler. And about 7:50 in the morning, the building is full of employees, and when this boiler explodes, it overheats and it explodes. You can see the trajectory that it takes. It fires up through all 4 stories of the factory, and it is going to hit the water tower. If you, in the other picture, you can't really see the water tower, I don't think. And then it's going to hit the engineer's house. This is where David Rockwell lived, right on the backside of that E in the factory. And his wife was home at the time, and she reported that shortly before the explosion, she could see her husband in his office from their kitchen window. Sadly, David Rockwell would be one of the victims that was unidentifiable following the tragedy. We'll get back more to what's happening in the building itself. Right now, we're following the trajectory. And eventually, this boiler, you can see how large it is. It's about 17 feet by 6 feet, slams into a home owned by Miss Mary Pratt, and it knocks it off the foundation by 2 or 3 feet. And the reports were that she had just left that portion of the house and moved, I think it was the back to the front that she walked when it slammed into her house. And if she had still been in that part of the house, that she may not have survived either. Yeah, it says there from the rear of the house. Okay. So meanwhile, back at the disaster, this was a artist rendering from a newspaper of what the explosion may have been like at the time. So we were talking earlier today about how this fire was really kind of a perfect storm. So when the explosion happens, it's a modern factory, remember, so it's got all these gas lines that are running through the factory. And they get broken, and so you have the embers from the boiler that are landing on this gas that's now leaking in the air. That's going to ignite. And then the floors in the factory are treated multiple times a week, if not nightly, with linseed oil to keep them shiny and dust free. And so that's highly flammable. And then all of those windows, 300 windows, they're going to blow out from the force of that explosion, which is going to bring a whoosh of oxygen into the building. And this is a perfect storm that is going to create a disaster, this massive loss of this factory and part of the next city block. In addition, when that boiler goes up through the building, it's going to knock down support beams and hit that water tower, which lands on the back border of the factory, completely pancaking those floors. And I believe most of the victims from the fire are in that part of the factory because the floors collide together, and people are unable to get out. So But on that day, there were also, in addition, we've talked a little bit about a few people that, oh, before I go on, I also want to mention that in the back part, I'm gonna split back if I can to that diagram. Back here are a couple sheds, small buildings. So there's Rockwell's house. Here, there's some sheds by this boiler house, and they are gonna ignite. And what's in that little shed is a chemical called naphtha. It's used to make shoe polish. Again, highly flammable. So this ignites a little bit after the first explosion. And by this point, when the second explosion happens, the firefighters on the scene have to go from a rescue operation to a containment operation. And they can no longer try to rescue the trapped people in the disaster. And while it is a gruesome thought to be true to history and justice of the situation, people reported being able to hear those that were trapped and unable to get out of the fire for blocks. They could hear the moans and the groans and the cries of the people that were being burned alive. And I wanted to double check on a number and I did not, but I have someone in the audience who could probably help me to tell me if it was 26 or 36 people that were unidentified. Do you remember?
I thought it was 26.
Okay, that's what my thought was, maybe it was a little bit more, so about 26 of the 58 people who perished were completely, their remains were completely unidentifiable. And so they are interred, without being able to recognize them in an individual grave. All right, so we'll get on to that, but this day also brought us some heroes. There were, as we mentioned, before, the firemen are on same block, so they were able to get to the fire. The Campello Engine Company #1 was right there. They were able to get on the scene very quickly, to start rescuing people from the fire. All of Brockton responded. I mean, this wasn't just Campello #1, but they were the first ones on the scene. You had passersby that were helping to rescue people from the fire. Some of the notable things that I pulled out of my research were John Twug and Billy Mannix. They ran down the street. They were able to find a ladder from somewhere. It could have been in somebody's yard. And they came back and were using the ladder to help rescue people out of the building. Across the street from the factory is St. Margaret's Church, which at the time was also a wooden structure, but thankfully did not catch on fire. But the priest there, I believe his name was James O'Rourke, he rushed in. And he went in multiple times, and with the help of other people, they were able to lift joists and heavy beams and rescue people who were trapped in the fire. I believe he went in 6 times before he was injured, to the extent that he had to stop going in. And then inside this factory, George Smith, he was one of the employees. He's trapped. His legs are pinned under some of the timberage and the wreckage. That you have to think about the factory, not just the building structure, but you also have all this heavy equipment in there that's being used to make the shoes. He cannot free himself, but his upper body is not trapped. It's his legs that are pinned, and he is able to assist 2 people that are able to get out from, because he could do that with his hands. He's able to free 2 people. And the paper at the time referred to George Smith as large of frame and big of heart. And I thought that was a beautiful rendering. And so he was able to rescue a woman named Lena Baker, and I believe it was his nephew. But Mr. Smith perished in the fire, and he left behind 3 little girls who were 3 of the over 50 children that lost a parent that day. Okay, so as we go, where's mine? That jumped in. Yeah, that's where I want to be. Okay, so here's where you can see the after the fire disaster. This this area here, this is actually Palmer Street. The factory's over here.
And they usually call it Calma.
Palmer,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
that was one thing I didn't know, I just was pronouncing the way it says, so that is Kalmar Street. And then back here, this cross street that runs parallel with Main Street is Denton. And there were homes back here that were damaged and destroyed, as well as all the buildings that lined Kalmar Street. Now I'm gonna, I've been saying it wrong so long. And as well as this part of Main Street here, several businesses were lost here as well. Other buildings are damaged. So, and at the time, this was the second largest boiler explosion disaster in the United States. It was only surpassed by the disaster on the steamship Sultana. After the Civil War, that was bringing home some Union soldiers when the boiler exploded there. They estimate that the damage covered 4 blocks of the city of Brockton and resulted in $250,000 in damage. And to us today, that probably doesn't sound like a lot, but in today's money, that's over $9,203,000 in damage. To help us understand the extent of that. Yeah. All right, so of the 58 people that perished, 56 died. At the site, 2 died later from their wounds, hospital. So, all right, so a little bit about how here's my numbers. I don't know. It's not coming back.
You can see it on the screen.
I know, but it's not coming back here where I can advance
Oh.
the slide.
Oh.
So I'm curious, like, okay, if I just hit, all right, I'm just hitting that. So a little bit about my hero. This is Leo Eriksson. Again, the Campello neighborhood was a Swedish neighborhood at this time, largely Swedes or other nationalities, I'm sure, immigrants that lived in the area as well, but it was kind of known as a Swedish district. The picture on the left is just a picture I found randomly online for inspiration of what I thought Leo might look like as a young man from 1905. And the picture on the left is fireman. This is actually a fire unit from West Virginia, but I was able to find something from the time period where they were in their uniforms to kind of give a sense of the story. So at the time, we mentioned already that the Campello station was right there on the same block. The reason I decided, I mentioned before about choosing a fireman hero, a little bit removed, yet we can still be right in on the action in telling the story. But also, I was so impressed by just the response of the Campello Fire Department, Engine Company number 1. And I read an account of a fireman by the last name of Moore. I was never able to find out his full name, the incident that I would call just and named him as Moore, but he was able to use an axe to free several employees that were trapped trying to get out of the building. They came to a locked gate. He was able to free them using an axe. And that was when I read that story, I was like, okay, my hero is going to be a fireman at that station. So that was kind of how I came across that. Here's an image of the Campello fire station. This is the actual fire station, and the picture was taken in that time frame. You can see how the building is. This building still stands today. We were able to visit it yesterday, which was thrilling for me. And outside you can see the horse-drawn cart there. So at this time, with the firefighting techniques that they have at this time, they were able to use a steam. I think I have a picture next of the steamer wagon itself, so I won't get into that just yet. But I know what I wanted to mention. But a fact that I found fascinating that I had to include in the book was that the bricks on this side of the building, I have to look and see. I am directionally challenged. I will fully admit that. My husband had to help me figure out which direction was which direction. So that would be the south side. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. The south side of the building over here, they said that up to three days later, they could still feel the heat in the bricks from how intense the fire was. So the temperature of the fire. And just thinking about that and the people that were unable to get out of the building, that's just really was a horrific event. Yeah, let's see what else did I say about this. So around this time, this firemen, when they go into fight a blaze, they're gonna have rubber. Rubber they can put on over their boots. They're gonna have rubber coats, but they did not have oxygen ventilation like we know today. So the firemen would often have a bandana or a scarf that they could wet and then tie around their mouth to help them breathe and filter out some of that smoke. And also the rubber that they're wearing, not only is it gonna give them a bit of insulation, it's also waterproof. And that will help them as well to fight, but no oxygen, not the way that we think of firefighters today. Being able to fight fire. So here's a picture that I was tickled to find, because this is actually Brockton's steamer tank that I found online, which was pretty cool. And at the time, the steam powered engine, I thought it was kind of ironic when I was studying this, that you're using fire, because the fire has to heat the water in the steamer to get it to pump. So in a sense, you're using fire to fight a fire, right? So, okay, so the horses pulled the steam powered pumps, and the difference from before when they had hand pumps to a modern steam pumper is about 300 gallons of water per minute difference. And that can obviously play a huge role when you're trying to put out a fire and save lives. But in order to be effective, that water has to be ready to produce steam by the time that they get to the site. So they cannot start with like room temperature water or lukewarm water. So in the fire station, they're keeping the water. They have a pipe in the firehouse that hooks to a hose that keeps that water hot. And then when they're called out, when the alarms ring, then they go and they light the boiler. They keep coals, could be rags soaked in kerosene, kindling, all goes into that boiler, the pan underneath the boiler, and they ignite that. And then there's someone who will ride on the back, and it's their job to make sure that that fire is staying lit and that it's hot, so that by the time they get to the fire, they can pump the water out of the steam. And then also one of the things I found in my research that was fascinating to me was how the firemen used the fire dogs. So today we will see cute kid stories with a Dalmatian and a fireman's hat riding on the fire truck. Why Dalmatians? So Dalmatians were considered not only smart dogs, any working dog is going to be a very smart dog, but they were very docile with the horses. So they could herd the horses, but the horses were not afraid of them. They would move in and out. So when they heard the alarm, the dogs would spring into action, and they could route the horses out of their stalls and line them up in the fire station so that the steamer wagon can be pulled up to them. And then the firemen can pull with pulley system. They can pull down the harnesses that are going to go right onto the horses and then attach it back to the steamer. And then as soon as they get the horses in position, the dogs run through those open bay doors that we saw in the previous picture and clear the bay, clear that, like that driveway, that opening of any pedestrians, any wagons, any cars, like that, so people know, like today we have alarms that do that. The truck, either an alarm system at the firehouse or just the sirens of the trucks, and that the trucks are gonna roll out of the station and you need to leave that open and clear. So I thought that was some fascinating information that I wanted to include in my story. So I show that when the fellas roll out. Okay, so the next slide's a little bit about my heroine, Etta Maxwell. So the picture, third from left, this is how I mostly saw Etta. This was the picture that inspired me, but I have her wearing spectacles. So then I have this picture that I liked this one. I thought she looked a little too strict there for my heroine. So, but I did like the image, remembering that she has the glasses that she wears. And over here is an image of a woman from that general time period. I think this was a little closer to 1911. But dressed in male clothing, because again, I have her masquerading as a man. So it's sort of like my inspiration picture for her. In the story, there's a fellow boarder in the boarding house that she lives in that was a retired vaudeville actor that helps her with her costume and helps her to come up with a costume, helps her to walk and act like a man, gives her tips on, male behavior. And then her hands, I thought would be her biggest giveaway because feminine hands would be a little hard to hide. So throughout the story, whenever she's doing an interview, she doesn't take notes. She remembers. And then when the interview's over, she'll jot down any details that she thinks might be something that would be confusing or specific. And people will often ask her, "You don't take notes?" And she'll say, "Oh, no, I just like to pay attention to the story because I knew her hands would be something that would be hard to hide."
Now, what about the woman on the right?
So the woman on the right here is, let me get her name correct, is Sally. Wrong page. Gotta peek at my notes for a second. Lost my page. Sally White, I believe, yeah, Sally Joy White she was one of the first staff reporters for the Boston Times. So in my story, I wanted to be true to what's actually going on in history. So there were a few women, I put this in my author's note, at the time who were able to write for newspapers. Most women that were writing for newspapers are writing domestic columns at this time. Things that appeal to women. Or in Edda's case, she has another job working for a fictional paper that I made up called The Gilded Gown, where she follows Boston's society. Things like that. But I wanted to mention Sally Joy White because she was the first female staffer at the Boston Post beginning in 1870. And she and 5 other women formed something called the New England Women's Press Association to help them further their careers and professionalism in a very male-dominated field. So I wanted to give a shout out to her, and also just to be accurate with history, I didn't want to leave people with an impression that women didn't work on newspapers. The type of stories that they were writing were not typically the hard-hitting stories. Okay, so what caused this explosion? Was it negligence? Something happened in the factory? Because remember the older boiler was online. This image here shows inspectors looking through, just like we do today when we have a fire or we have when there's a plane crash or a train collision, you'll have inspectors come out to try to determine the cause of the event. So the Hartford Steam Boiler and Inspection Company was responsible. They were the company that Robbins Grover hired to do routine inspections on his boilers. All of the boilers, both the old one that they were using that day and the new one, had passed all of their routine inspections. And there was no negligence on the part of Robbins Grover. So it was sort of just the day that the boiler gave out. And what they discovered was when the boiler was manufactured, there was a crack in something called a lap joint, which is not visible. It was something that happened during the manufacturing. And it gave out that day and the boiler overheated and caused the explosion. Let's see if there's anything else about that I want to add.
I think, that company, is still in.
I don't know, actually.
Okay.
It might be, because there's an insurance company now known as the Hartford, so I don't know if it came out of that.
That'll be interesting.
Right. That's something true, that is something to look at. So, one of the things that came out of this horrific tragedy and another boiler explosion that happened in Lynn, Massachusetts within about a year of this, was that Massachusetts passed legislation called an act relating to the operation and inspection of steam boilers. Old-fashioned language there. In 1907, that set much stricter standards for the manufacturing and operation of steam boilers in any building in the state. And it became the national model. So a few years later, national legislation was passed so that workers would be protected from all over, and all over the country. So there was, I really enjoy when, even though a tragedy happens, that something good. I think the human spirit is one where we learn, we look at what happened and we learn and we try to do better. And so that was also, I thought, a really neat thing, that it wasn't just another awful tragedy, but that it was used for good. Another thing that I really liked was how the town, pulled together. So in a city, the size of Brockton, I remember it was like 50,000 people, something like that at the time. The city almost, with 6,000 shoe workers, almost everyone knew someone that worked in the shoe industry. And so even though it might not have been their factory, they're feeling that could have been us. So, the city really came together, and let me see if I can measure it. So the city mourned together. These are some images from the Brockton Enterprise. That's a headline there talking about the number of hearses that are lining Belmont Street. And then here below is part of the procession. You can see the number of Ultra Boys pulling one of the hearses down the street. Each caisson had a number of Ultra Boys with it, firemen from the city. And so that was quite remarkable. And I thought that the way the city came together, the mayor at the time was Mayor Keith. And within hours of the disaster, I think it's called the Shoe and Boot Workers Union had offered $1,000 to set up a fund to aid the victims of the disaster. And the city took that and ran with it. Other factories donated, average citizens donated, employees from other factories donated. And Andrew Carnegie, who is a name that most people know as a great philanthropist, he made a huge donation as well. And within that time, the total amount of the cash raised to aid the victims was $105,000. Now, going back, like we were talking about with the damage, in today's money, that is over $3,765,000. That's a lot. That's a huge amount of money when you're talking about a working class neighborhood. Most of those donations were not from people like Andrew Carnegie. Most of those donations were from average workers. Several other unions also made donations into that fund. And that money was used to spend to help those that perished and those that also survived but were wounded. The children of those that lost a parent were taken care of through their high school education to make sure that they were able to go to school. And there's a great write-up that my main source of information for this book was the history of the Brockton Relief Fund that was published in 1907. And if you're interested in that, you can find that in Google Books, and it goes into great detail in showing you the thought that went into the committee in deciding how to distribute those funds, and how to invest the money as they were going to be distributed so that those children could have money coming to them until they were adults. As well as widows. The widows were well taken care of as well. So that's fascinating. Okay. And then, as you can see here, we talked a little bit about the mourning. Thursday, the 23rd was declared a day of mourning in Brockton. And as you can see, people came out, lined the streets. People were wearing armbands. Schools were closed, businesses were closed. You can just see how it affected the community. Yeah. And one of the legacies to me of the whole disaster is that how the community was able to come together. in that, and I found this quote that I used in the book. This was from an article in the Brockton Times. And it says there was no creed, no color line, no hostility of capital and labor. The common stripes of men were forgotten and all were brought closer together in the beautiful harmony of the universal brotherhood. Sorrow, the great leveler, the great arbiter, had done its work. And I got really impacted me, because I thought, isn't that how we should be even today? That we should be looking for what it is that we have in common, rather than what tears us apart. And I just thought that that was really, I think, the long lasting legacy, that, and of course, the legislation, but to me, on the human level, the way that everybody pulled together. So then just a little bit about me. These are my other books that I have published. A Love Restored is a full-length novel that's set in 1870s Virginia. Chiseled on the Heart is a novella collection, which means each author listed there wrote a shorter story. It's about 35,000 word story. And that all follows 4 generations of men who contribute to an heirloom nativity set. And Across the Shores is another novella collection. And all the authors there cut off there at the bottom. You can't see the last 2, but this follows 4 generations of women and a necklace that is passed down through the generations, and how it's a cross and how that affects them. And the stories start in the gold mines of Australia, travel to Baltimore at the time of the Great Railroad Strike, go to Canada. If you like Mounties, you'll get to see a Mountie in the Canada story, and then finally down to the shores of North Carolina and German U-boats during World War II. So those are some of my stories there. Then if you'd like to join my faith newsletter family, I would love to have you, and you can find me on social media, and I would love to connect with you. Thank you.
I've been trying to find your Facebook.
Oh, you couldn't find me.
Well, for some reason, my phone wasn't connecting, and when I went to grab my computer, it was dead. But
Yeah.
maybe that's not what is actually live streaming on.
Oh, okay. I don't
So,
know.
Guys, don't say, so there might be some questions.
yeah, that's what I was trying to
Oh,
find.
I didn't think there was anybody actually on there.
Well, I thought they might have joined on Facebook,
Um,
and then, I can find out where it was actually streaming.
what happens when it's a rookie debut?
Yeah, so let's see, maybe we can stop screen sharing and see if anyone. Let's go to where we're live streaming. But I don't want to stop live streaming, I want to go to.
You met, I think, a couple years before that, when we went to that Beth Moore event.
Oh, Beth Moore, yeah.
Yeah, we have a mutual friend that.
So do you have multiple Facebook accounts or just the one Facebook account?
That's my husband's account.
Okay.
That's fine, from, it's Kelly Chris Gosborn or Kelly Gosborn author.
Yeah, because that's where I was looking and I wasn't seeing that it was live streaming on there.
Okay,
But
I wonder if it went to his Goose Creek Place page.
Yeah. that might be.
I would use it. Do like what is going on? Why is this-
Oh, yeah, I thought it was going to share yours. Maybe I'll go see if it's showing up there. Yeah, I could confuse a lot of people. What is this?
No, I have.
Rookie, rookie.
Yeah, let me try to look at Goose Creek.
I can't, I mean, I wasn't logged into that one. I
Yeah,
was logged into my own, but
Oh, very good.
let's see.
and you'll see if somehow it went there.
That. There was a Heather at the other one.
Okay, so this, that should be this, is it?
Kelly owns the place, yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
the
the
other
work
woman that, no, it's the other one that works at Rachel,
Rachel, yeah.
I think it's her cousin, and she says, no, her niece.
her niece.
Cause she came over to the table and she called her Auntie Kelly, that's really cute.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
there was just a woman that had come in who was a Heather.
Yeah.
So. And I'm sure where it went to.
Now, how many of these have you done? Have you gone to different?
This is the first presentation I've ever given ever,
Oh, wow.
since I taught like I don't know, how long ago was I? I've been married 35 years, so
Now, why,
36 years ago.
now, why this bookstore and not another? Because
Well,
of the
I reached
Brockton
out-
connection?
Yeah, and then I got, my publisher gave me the names of 3 or 4 other bookstores that are like in driving distance of me. That I'm gonna reach out to and see if I can go for a presentation, since I've done all this work, I might save my library.
Yeah.
Like to do something.
Oh, I don't know where it actually like. It's put out like screen somewhere on Facebook. So it's out there somewhere in the world.
It doesn't appear to be on his page, because I signed in as him.
So, yeah, it's big.
But there will be a recording, so if people have questions. People do watch the YouTube recordings.
Let's go back to
Oh,
my.
good, yeah, so the question, that's what, because there's always a possibility of, I always say questions. Comments,
This is
what
my
do I say?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
it's on my page.
okay,
There it is.
Yeah, it
Kelly
says you're
Christopher.
live. There you go.
Yeah.
Says I'm still live.
okay, that's what I thought we were. Let's see, did anyone post anything? It looks like people.
I see one comment.
Hope said I love Kelly Gossamer's
Yeah.
work.
Who's holding?
She says,
And it looks like there were.
Must be a friend.
she's a friend, but I didn't pay her to say that.
How many people does it say have watched?
It's showing us live now, I think.
Yeah, you're still live.
Yeah, it tells you later. how
We're
many.
still live. How do we stop?
Oh, well, do you want to answer any questions?
I don't think there's anybody there.
Yeah, okay, so we'll end we have to end the live on that.
Oh, okay.
Let's see, where's.
It's so interesting.
Where can I find?
I'm not technologically.
Well, you helped us with the lab thing though.
Yeah, well,
If you got something there.
now, I still teach 2 days a week, but my students are very knowledgeable.
Well, I clicked on it.
I would always, here's the last level high school. I said, well, how did the students would show me, then I would show up back, I said, oh, really, how? So I said, students, because they are always in the know. And then the same with the college stuff. Oh, Professor, what's the problem? And then that's how I heard. But I myself, I am not technologically savvy.
And it's not my name. If I have to do anything, like if I have to call an husband. It's that help off me.
Yeah.
You can see like the screen, you can smell.
Yeah,
Um,
he must be